My wife told me I was lucky she even let me touch her after 23 years of marriage. That night, I left a wooden box on her pillow. She didn't sleep for 3 days. You see, I'm not just a mechanic. I'm an industrial engineer who solves problems. And my cheating wife just became my biggest project. My name is Dwayne Shepard. I'm 51 years old, and I own a small but successful industrial equipment repair shop in Columbus, Ohio. For 23 years, I thought I had the perfect marriage. My wife Irene sold high-end real estate. I fixed machines that kept factories running, and we built what looked like the American dream from the outside. The moment everything changed happened on a Tuesday evening in March. I just got home from a 12-hour day, fixing a busted hydraulic press at the steel plant. My hands were still black with grease despite scrubbing them raw in the shop sink. Irene was in our walk-in closet, trying on some fancy dress for another one of her client dinners. "Hey, honey," I called out, walking over to give her a quick kiss on the cheek. "How was your day?" She stepped back like I was carrying the plague, her face twisting with disgust. "Dwayne, don't touch me when you're filthy like that." I looked down at my work clothes, clean jeans and a fresh shirt I'd changed into before leaving the shop. "I'm not that dirty. I cleaned up before coming home." Irene rolled her eyes and adjusted the neckline of her dress in the mirror. "You always smell like motor oil and metal shavings. Honestly, you're lucky I even let you touch me most of the time." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the gut. Lucky? Like I was some desperate beggar grateful for scraps of affection from my own wife. I stood there for a moment, watching her primp for another evening with clients, while treating her husband like hired help. I nodded slowly, keeping my voice level. "You're right. I should know my place." Something in my tone made her glance at me sharply, but I was already walking away. That night, while she dolled herself up for yet another business dinner that would run past midnight, I sat in my workshop behind the house. The place where I built precision tools with my hands, where I solved problems that stumped engineers half my age. That's when I realized something important. I wasn't just lucky to touch her. She was about to discover just how unlucky she'd been to underestimate me. The next morning, I started my investigation the way any smart man would, by creating a completely different version of myself. While Irene was at her yoga class, I set up a new email account and social media profiles for Marcus Wellington, a wealthy tech entrepreneur from Seattle looking to invest in Columbus real estate. I used stock photos of some clean-cut guy in expensive suits and crafted a backstory that would make any real estate agent drool. Software company sold for $50 million, looking to diversify into luxury properties, cash buyer with no financing contingencies. The kind of client that would make Irene's commission quota for the entire year. My workshop had everything I needed. 23 years of fixing industrial equipment teaches you about more than just hydraulics and electrical systems. I'd installed security cameras for half the factories in town, set up computer networks, even helped the police department with some digital forensics work. Creating a fake online presence was child's play compared to rebuilding a CNC machine from scratch. Within 2 hours, Marcus Wellington had a LinkedIn profile showing connections to real tech executives, a Facebook page with carefully curated posts about business ventures, and even some planet mentions on investment forums. I made sure to include subtle details, photos of expensive watches, casual mentions of private jet travel, the kind of breadcrumbs that would hook someone like Irene. That evening, she came home from work with that familiar fake enthusiasm she used when she was selling someone something. "How was your day, honey?" Irene asked, not really listening as she scrolled through her phone. Same old, same old," I replied, watching her over my coffee mug. "Fixed a bearing assembly that had the whole production line down. Nothing as exciting as your world." She barely looked up. I've got some new prospects coming in this week. Could be big." I nodded and went back to my newspaper, but inside I was calculating. By tomorrow afternoon, Marcus Wellington would be sliding into her DMs with interest in Columbus's most exclusive properties. The kind of deal that would make her think she'd hit the lottery. The beautiful thing about social engineering is that it works best on people who think they're too smart to fall for it. Irene prided herself on reading people, on knowing a genuine client from a time waster. But everyone has blind spots, and hers was greed wrapped in designer packaging. I spent the rest of the evening fine-tuning Marcus's profile, adding just enough authentic details to pass a basic background check. Tomorrow, I'd start fishing and knowing my wife's appetite for wealthy clients, I wouldn't have to wait long for her to take the bait. After all, she made it clear I should be grateful for her attention. Time to see how grateful she'd be for Marcus Wellington's interest. Marcus Wellington made first contact on Wednesday morning. I timed it perfectly. Sent the initial inquiry through Irene's company website at 9:47 a.m., right when she'd be checking emails with her first coffee. The message was professional but intriguing. A tech entrepreneur looking to relocate his business operations to Columbus, interested in luxury properties for both personal residence and corporate entertaining. The response came faster than I'd expected. Irene called me at the shop 20 minutes later, her voice practically vibrating with excitement. "Dwayne, I just got the most incredible inquiry," she said, barely containing herself. "This could be the deal of the year." "That's great, honey," I replied, wiping hydraulic fluid off my hands. New client. Marcus Wellington. He's a tech mogul from Seattle. Sold his company for $50 million and wants to buy here in Columbus. He specifically requested our premium listings. I made appropriately impressed noises while mentally noting how quickly she'd swallow the bait. Sounds like a big fish. When are you meeting him? He wants to start with a virtual consultation today, then fly in this weekend to see properties, Irene said. I'm going to clear my entire schedule. This commission could pay for that kitchen renovation we've been talking about. The kitchen renovation I've been talking about, she meant, but I let it slide. That afternoon, I watched through the security cameras I'd installed in our home office as Irene prepared for a video call with Marcus. She changed outfits 3 times, applied fresh makeup, and even lit a scented candle to create the right ambience. The effort she put into impressing a stranger she'd never met was more than she'd invested in our marriage in years. The video call went exactly as planned. I'd used voice-changing software and a virtual background showing a sleek Seattle penthouse. Marcus Wellington was charming, educated, and most importantly, ready to spend serious money. He complimented Irene's expertise, asked thoughtful questions about the Columbus market, and dropped casual mentions of his private jet and investment portfolio. By the end of the call, Irene was practically purring. She immediately started researching Columbus's most exclusive properties, calling contacts about off-market listings, and planning an itinerary that would showcase everything the city had to offer. That evening, she was more animated than I'd seen her in months. Marcus is incredible, she gushed over dinner. He's young, successful, and he actually appreciates expertise. Not like some clients who waste your time. I nodded along, playing the supportive husband. He sounds perfect for you. The double meaning flew right over her head. She was already too deep in the fantasy to notice. Marcus Wellington's second call came Friday evening, just as Irene was getting ready for another mysterious dinner appointment. I watched from my workshop as she took the call in the bedroom, her voice dropping to a more intimate tone than any business conversation required. Of course I understand the need for discretion, she was saying, twirling her hair like a schoolgirl. Ultra-high net worth clients require special handling. I'd programmed Marcus to be everything Irene found irresistible, successful, mysterious, and most importantly, interested in more than just real estate. Through carefully crafted conversations, I was building a profile that would reveal exactly what kind of woman I'd married. The recording equipment I'd installed in the house was military-grade stuff I'd acquired through contacts at the defense plant. Every conversation was being captured in crystal-clear digital audio, timestamps, and all. But the real breakthrough came when Irene started texting Marcus between calls. She'd given him her personal number for urgent property matters, but the messages that started flowing were anything but professional. Screenshots of her texts revealed a side of my wife I'd never seen. Flirtatious, eager to please, and increasingly personal in her revelations. I don't usually share this with clients, she texted, but my husband just doesn't understand ambition. He's content fixing machines while I'm building an empire. Marcus responded with just the right mixture of sympathy and encouragement. Sounds like you deserve someone who appreciates your drive. You have no idea, came her reply, followed by a photo of herself in the black dress she claimed was for client dinners. By Saturday morning, I had enough digital evidence to fill a thumb drive. But I wasn't done yet. The family connection I discovered would add a whole new dimension to this investigation. While researching Irene's background for Marcus's persona, I'd stumbled across something interesting in the county records. Her father, Robert Caldwell, Had been involved in a business deal that destroyed my father's construction company back in 1987. Dad never told me the full story before he died, just that a real estate developer had screwed him out of payment on a major project. Now I knew why Irene's last name had seemed familiar when we first met. Her family had a history of taking advantage of hardworking men. The apple, it seemed, hadn't fallen far from the tree. That afternoon, while Irene prepared for Marcus Wellington's arrival in Columbus, I made a decision. This wasn't just about her infidelity anymore. This was about settling a debt that was 36 years overdue. The Caldwell family was about to learn that some bills eventually come due, with interest. Saturday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. Irene had spent the entire day preparing for Marcus Wellington's supposed arrival in Columbus, choosing her outfit like she was going to meet royalty instead of conduct business. She'd settled on a navy blue dress that hugged her curves just right, paired with heels that added 3 inches to her height and about $50 to what she thought she was worth. Marcus is taking me to the Metropolitan for dinner, she announced, checking her makeup one final time. He wants to discuss the investment potential over a proper meal. The Metropolitan was the most expensive restaurant in Columbus, the kind of place where appetizers cost more than most people spend on groceries for a week. It was also where I proposed to her 23 years ago, back when she still looked at me like I mattered. That sounds wonderful, honey, I replied, my voice steady as granite. You look beautiful. She smiled, the kind of smile that used to make my heart skip, but now just reminded me how well she could perform when it served her interests. Don't wait up. These business dinners can run late, especially with clients at Marcus's level. After she left, I walked to my workshop and retrieved the wooden box I've been crafting for the past 2 weeks. It wasn't large, about the size of a jewelry box, but I'd built it with the same precision I brought to every project. Solid oak, brass hinges, a felt-lined interior with custom compartments for the evidence I'd collected. Inside, I placed the printed screenshots of her text conversations with Marcus Wellington, each one more damning than the last. Her complaints about our marriage, her flirtations with a man she believed could upgrade her lifestyle, and most revealing of all, her confession that she'd been settling for years with someone beneath her standards. The USB drive containing the audio recordings went into the second compartment, along with a printed timeline of her lies about client dinners and business trips. But the centerpiece was a handwritten note on my company letterhead, the same letterhead my father had used for his construction business before Robert Caldwell destroyed it. Irene, the note read, you once told me I was lucky you let me touch you. Tonight, you'll discover just how unlucky you've been to underestimate me. The man you've been texting doesn't exist, but the evidence of your betrayal does. You have until Monday morning to decide if you want this to remain between us or become public knowledge. Choose wisely. Your devoted husband, Dwayne. I placed the box on her pillow, right where she'd see it the moment she entered our bedroom. Then I sat in my recliner downstairs and waited, a cup of black coffee growing cold in my hands as the grandfather clock in the hallway marked each passing minute. She came home at 11:43 p.m., her heels clicking on the hardwood floor with the rhythm of someone who thought she'd successfully deceived her husband once again. I heard her climbing the stairs, the pause when she reached her bedroom door, and then the silence that stretched on for what felt like hours. When the crying started, I knew she'd open the box. The crying lasted until 3 in the morning. I know because I lay awake listening to every sob, every sharp intake of breath, every moment when she thought she might be brave enough to come downstairs and face me. She never did. Sunday morning brought a different Irene to our kitchen table. Gone was the confident real estate agent who'd manipulated wealthy clients and dismissed her husband's worth. In her place sat a woman who looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight, her eyes red-rimmed and her hands shaking as she poured coffee she wouldn't drink. We need to talk, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked up from my newspaper, keeping my expression neutral. About what? You know what? She clutched her robe tighter around herself, like it could somehow protect her from the conversation we both knew was coming. The box. The messages. How did you? Who is Marcus Wellington? I folded the paper carefully, meeting her eyes for the first time in months with complete honesty. Marcus Wellington is exactly what you wanted him to be, Irene. Rich, successful, and completely unimpressed by blue-collar work. The only difference is that he's not real. Her face went white. You catfished me? Your own wife. I gave you exactly what you asked for. I replied, standing to refill my coffee mug. Someone who appreciated your expertise, understood your ambitions, and made you feel superior to the man you married. The fact that you fell for it so completely says everything about where your heart really is. She started crying again, but these weren't the desperate sobs from last night. These were calculated tears, the kind she used to get out of speeding tickets or negotiate better deals. I'd seen them too many times to be moved by them now. "Dwayne, please," she pleaded. "I never meant for it to go this far. I was lonely, and he seemed to understand me in ways that your husband doesn't." I finished. "Because according to your messages, I'm just some grease monkey who's lucky to touch you. Remember saying that?" The words hit her like a physical blow. She'd forgotten that casual cruelty in the laundry room, but I'd recorded every variation of it in our text conversations. Every complaint about settling for less, every wish for something better, every moment she treated our marriage like a consolation prize. "I was frustrated," she whispered. "I didn't mean." "You meant every word," I said, sitting back down and opening my paper. "The only thing you're sorry about is getting caught. But here's what's going to happen next, Irene. You're going to discover that psychological games work both ways." That afternoon, I visited Dr. Sarah Morrison, the marriage counselor Irene had been secretly seeing for 6 months. Not as her husband seeking therapy, but as a new client named David Shepard, recently divorced and struggling with trust issues after my ex-wife's affair. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was using a marriage counselor to destroy my marriage. But this Dr. Morrison was exactly what I needed, a professional who could help me understand my wife's psychology while unknowingly giving me ammunition for the war she'd started. Dr. Sarah Morrison's office became my weekly reconnaissance mission. Under the identity of David Shepard, I learned more about my wife's psychology in 3 sessions than I had in 23 years of marriage. The doctor unknowingly revealed Irene's deepest insecurities, her fear of being ordinary, her need for external validation, and most importantly, her pattern of seeking the validation through wealthy male clients. My previous patient struggled with similar issues, Dr. Morrison said during our 4th session. She felt trapped in a marriage that didn't match her self-image of success. Unfortunately, she began seeking validation through inappropriate relationships with high-net-worth individuals in her professional sphere. My blood ran cold. She was talking about Irene without realizing it. "What kind of inappropriate relationships?" I asked, keeping my voice clinically curious. "Personal services in exchange for exclusive business deals," she replied, consulting her notes. It started as harmless flirtation, but escalated when she realized how much wealthy men were willing to pay for discretion. That evening, I confronted Irene directly. She was in the kitchen, pretending normalcy while her world crumbled around her. The evidence I'd gathered from Marcus Wellington was just the beginning. Now I needed to know about the others. "We need to discuss your client's services," I said, setting my coffee mug down with deliberate precision. Irene's face went white. "I don't know what you mean." Robert Chun, the pharmaceutical executive. David Martinez, the hedge fund manager. Should I continue? Or would you prefer to explain why your appointments with married millionaires always happen in hotel rooms? She collapsed into a chair like her strings had been cut. "How did you?" "I'm an industrial engineer, Irene. I solve problems by analyzing patterns. Your pattern is sleeping with married clients for business advantages." I sat across from her, my voice steady as steel. "The question now is whether their wives deserve to know what services they're really paying for." The confession came pouring out. 3 years of exchanging sexual favors for exclusive listings, insider information about upcoming developments, and introductions to other wealthy clients. She'd built her entire recent success on her body, then came home to lecture me about ambition and settling for less. "It started innocent," she whispered, "just flirtation to close deals. But then Robert offered me that pharmaceutical development project if I'd be accommodating. The commission was $60,000, Dwayne, more than you make in 6 months." I nodded calmly. "And Martinez?" "He gave me inside information about the downtown renovation project. I made $300,000 in commissions because I knew which properties to target first." She looked up at me with desperate eyes. "I did it for us. For our future." "No," I replied, standing up. "You did it because you're exactly like your father, taking shortcuts, using people, and convincing yourself it's justified because you're special." That night, I compiled a list of every client she'd mentioned, along with their wives' contact information. The Morrison family had destroyed honest businesses for generations. It was time their victims fought back. Monday morning marked the beginning of Irene's professional destruction. I'd spent the weekend crafting anonymous packages for 5 different wives, each containing evidence of their husband's arrangements with my wife. Photos, hotel receipts, text message screenshots, everything needed to prove that their marriages were being subsidized by Irene services. The first call came at 9:23 a.m. Mrs. Chin's voice was ice-cold fury as she demanded to speak with Irene about professional misconduct. The second call followed 20 minutes later, Martinez's wife, threatening legal action. By noon, Irene's phone was ringing constantly with lawyers, angry spouses, and former clients desperately trying to contain the scandal. "They're all calling me a prostitute," Irene sobbed, pacing our living room like a caged animal. "My reputation is ruined. The brokerage is launching an investigation." I looked up from my newspaper, my expression unchanged. "Actions have consequences. You built your success on deception, and now the foundation is collapsing. You did this," she accused, her grief transforming into rage. "You destroyed my career because you couldn't handle having a successful wife." "I handled having a successful wife just fine," I replied calmly. "What I couldn't handle was having a wife who treated our marriage like a business transaction while selling herself to the highest bidders." The scandal spread through Columbus's real estate community like wildfire. Irene's former clients distanced themselves, her colleagues whispered in corners, and her brokerage quietly began transferring her listings to other agents. By Wednesday, she received a formal suspension pending the outcome of multiple ethics investigations. That afternoon, she tried one last manipulation tactic. She dressed in her most conservative outfit and approached me with the humility she should have shown years ago. "Dwayne, please," she begged. "I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. I'll leave real estate. We can start over somewhere new. I'll be the wife you deserve." I set down my tools and looked at her directly. The wife I deserved wouldn't have needed to be caught to treat me with respect. The wife I deserved wouldn't have built her career on her back while calling her husband lucky to touch her. "I was wrong," she whispered. "I see that now. Can't we try counseling? Can't we rebuild what we had?" "What we had was built on a lie," I replied. "You married me because you thought I'd be grateful enough to overlook anything. But you underestimated something crucial. I'm not just a mechanic who fixes broken things. I'm an engineer who understands when something is beyond repair." That evening, while Irene called lawyers and tried to salvage her crumbling career, I sat in my workshop and opened a folder containing my father's old business documents. Tomorrow, I would contact the Morrison family directly. Robert Caldwell had used legal technicalities to destroy my father's construction company 36 years ago. His daughter had inherited his contempt for honest work, but she'd also inherited his vulnerability to exposure. The sins of the father were about to be visited upon the daughter, with interest compounded over decades of waiting for justice. The end came on a Thursday morning in October, exactly 8 months after Irene had told me I was lucky to touch her. She stood in our kitchen with 2 suitcases and the broken expression of someone who'd finally run out of lies to tell herself. "The brokerage terminated my license," she said, her voice hollow. "The state board is reviewing my certification. 3 of the wives are filing criminal charges for extortion." I poured my coffee with steady hands, the same hand she'd once called lucky to touch her. And Robert Caldwell. Her father's involvement had been the final nail in her professional coffin. When I'd contacted him directly with evidence of his daughter's activities, the old man had tried to use his political connections to bury the scandal. Instead, he'd drawn attention to his own questionable business practices, triggering investigations that stretched back decades. "Dad's under federal investigation," she whispered. "They're looking into every construction project he touched since the 1980s. The statute of limitations might not protect him from the fraud charges." I nodded slowly. Justice delayed wasn't justice denied after all. "I need money," Irene continued, desperation creeping into her voice. "Enough to disappear, start over somewhere new. You owe me that much." "I owe you nothing," I replied, meeting her eyes directly. "But I'll make you the same offer your father made mine. You can have exactly what he paid my family for 3 months of construction work." She stared at me, understanding dawning in her features. Nothing. Nothing, I confirmed. Which is exactly what you brought to this marriage beyond contempt for the man who loved you. The divorce papers have been filed weeks ago, along with evidence that made any settlement impossible. Adultery, inappropriate business practices, fraud. The courts would leave her with nothing but the debt from her legal fees. I was wrong, she said, tears streaming down her face. I see that now. Can't we start over? I'll be different. I'll appreciate what we had. I set down my mug and looked at her one final time. What we had was built on your lie that you respected me. What we have now is built on the truth that you never did. I prefer the truth. She picked up her suitcases with shaking hands. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore, I replied. You made your choices, Irene. Now you get to live with them. After she left, I walked to my workshop and opened the wooden box that had started her downfall. Empty now, it sat on my workbench like a monument to finished business. I'd built it to hold evidence, but what it really contained was justice, served cold. The Caldwell family had spent decades taking from honest men. Now they'd learned that some debts passed through generations, and the Andrews family always paid what it owed. 6 months later, I stood in the lobby of my expanded repair shop, watching my team install equipment that would double our capacity. The insurance settlement from Irene's fraud case had provided unexpected capital, along with contracts from 3 major manufacturers who'd heard about our precision work. Marcus Wellington's fake identity had served one final purpose. Legitimate tech companies had started reaching out after seeing his supposed endorsement of Columbus's industrial capabilities. Sometimes fiction becomes reality when you build it carefully enough. The house felt different now, lighter somehow. I'd repainted every room, donated her belongings to charity, and converted her office into a proper library. The space she'd used to deceive clients now held my father's construction journals and my own engineering texts. Honest work documented by honest men. Dr. Morrison had closed her practice after the ethics violations came to light. Apparently, discussing patients with other clients violated several professional standards, even when done unknowingly. I felt no satisfaction in her downfall. She'd been a tool, not an enemy. The real victory came in a letter from the state attorney general's office. Robert Caldwell's federal trial would include testimony from families like mine, contractors who'd been cheated out of payment decades ago. My father's documentation had proved invaluable in establishing patterns of fraud that stretched back to the 1970s. Dad would have liked this, I said aloud, standing in my workshop where his old toolbox sat beside my precision instruments. Different generations, same principles. Build things that last, honor your commitments, and never let anyone convince you that honest work is somehow inferior to clever manipulation. The anniversary of our divorce arrived without fanfare. I spent it doing what I'd always done, fixing things that were broken, solving problems that frustrated other men, and building machines that would outlast the people who operated them. That evening, I crafted a new wooden box, smaller than the first one, but made with the same precision. Inside, I placed a single photograph of my father at the construction site Robert Caldwell had refused to pay for. Beside it, I added the final court documents that had awarded damages to 37 families the Caldwell organization had defrauded over the years. The box would sit on my desk as a reminder that patience isn't weakness, it's preparation. Some battles take decades to win, but victory tastes sweeter when it's seasoned with justice. I was 52 years old, owned a thriving business, and slept peacefully in a house built on truth instead of lies. Irene had been right about one thing. I was lucky to be free.